Well, a very warm welcome to Diary of a Professional Tennis Coach. And today we have a guest that I've been longing to have for many months, even years. And this is a particularly good time to get Sandra Zaniewska because her player, Marta Kostyuk, is in a bit of a role right now, having won the titles in Rouen in France at 250 level and then in Madrid at 1000 level. It's been a startling rise for the Ukrainian. And of course, no player could do it alone. They need a fantastic coach. And we have got one today in Sandra. Sandra, a warm welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Candy, for having me. Very excited to be here.
And we find you in Paris in preparation for Roland Garros. You've taken a few weeks off after all the success. Perhaps let's start there with Rouen first and then going on to the clay courts of Madrid. How much of a surprise was that Marta clinched both crowns back to back?
Well, I mean, it was a surprise, of course, because when it comes, it's always a surprise. But then at the same time, it feels like this is what you work for. So in a way, you're waiting for this to come. At the same time, the moment that it finally happens is a surprise. But yeah, really just a reward for all the work that she's put in throughout, not even just the last months or years, but really throughout her whole life, ever since she started playing. So it's beautiful moment to summarize the work.
And well done to you. I actually know Marta's uncle, Taras, because he's played senior tennis for Canada and I've played senior tennis for Great Britain. He was dating actually a good friend of mine and he's a superb player and a wonderful coach. And I know Marta's mum also has a tennis background as well. I'd love to know how you met, first of all, why you decided to come off the tour and go straight into coaching and the players that you've worked with. So let's start with when you first met Marta and what you initially thought of her game.
I remember seeing her first time at the Australian Open when it was the year after she won juniors and she qualified, played the main draw, lost in the third round there. And, I was like, wow, this girl is fire. She's playing great tennis. She's got pretty fiery personality as well. Like there's a lot going on, a lot of emotions, but you could clearly see that the tennis is there and the athleticism is there. So I thought that that's going to be someone that we're going to be seeing a lot of in the coming years. But I was working with another player at the time, and never even thought of potentially working with Marta one day. And then a couple of years later, when I just finished working at Muratoglu Academy, I decided to take a couple of months off, but I really wanted to get back on tour and coach again, because this is what I missed while being at the academy. And, there were only a couple of players that I felt like I could go with anytime, because I felt like these are the ones that, can really disrupt the game. And Marta was one of them. And pretty much I finished at Muratoglu in May. And I was in London for Wimbledon, but mostly just socially, visiting friends, visiting also my brother, and Wimbledon was just happening at the time. So I thought that I'm gonna go and watch a couple of matches of my friends as well. And Marta's agent came to me on one of the days, and she, asked me if I would be potentially interested. And to be honest, I couldn't believe that it is an option, because Marta was one of those players that I would go with anytime. So I said, let me cancel my time off, the couple of months that I wanted to have, and let's start right away whenever Marta wants to. So after Wimbledon, we did a trial, and ever since then, we are still going strong.
Incredible. I've actually had, as you probably know, Mike James on the podcast a couple of times, and he and I were discussing the brevity sometimes of WTA players and their coaches. I think the average the WTA tour has found is 5 months, which we both agreed was just simply not long enough to have a good coaching relationship. But of course, the chemistry has to be there, doesn't it, to build? If you like each other, if you respect each other, that helps. And obviously that is true of your relationship. Did you initially get on really well? What clicked?
Yeah, I think, we have similar characters and similar sense of humor. So off the court, we got along really well from the beginning. On the court, it was a little bit more tricky because the results weren't there from the very beginning. We've had actually the couple of first tournaments were not great. And, I was thinking, wow, I don't know if she's actually going to want to keep me, because it always helps if you start with a player and have those results right away. we did good work, but it didn't really translate onto the matches just yet. But at the same time, Marta felt that something is changing. So she was like, okay, I cannot really translate it on the matches just yet, but I see the direction and I trust the direction. So I was very lucky with that she's very self-aware of herself off the court as well, but right now I'm talking more on the court. She knows, like, she can feel very quickly what works and what doesn't, and I think that she trusted the vision and the direction that I had. It was also very it was aligned with what she thought and what she wanted for her tennis as well, and that helped. Then we basically had a little bit of a longer period of practice time during prep, and then the results came in right away in Australia where she played quarterfinal at Australian Open. So I only then I felt like I could exhale a little bit, and I was like, okay, now I feel like we are where we need to be. So we did a bit of work, the results are there, we feel good with each other, and I only felt like actually we started from then on.
Interesting. So it sounds like you had, as you said, similar personalities, similar sense of humor, which is, I think, so important. What is that sense of humor? Do you like dry humor, or
yes, a bit dry, a bit sarcastic, yeah.
Great.
We
That's
also
quite British humor.
Yes, that's true. And we also, sometimes tease each other and make fun of each other, like still in a respectful and gentle way, but we both like that kind of humor, so we push it a little bit there as well.
I love that. And then when you first met, you talked about sort of being on the same page in terms of what she needed to improve and do to get better. What was that? Where specifically did you go?
Well, we both wanted her to, be more aggressive. So obviously the aggression was the key, because it is in tennis. You cannot be defensive and, be an unbelievable player. But at the same time, Marta is not the typical, like, if you say aggressive, like you think, okay, she's going to be close to the baseline, hit the ball flat, and play this typical aggressive women's tennis. But that's not really Marta. She has so many tools. Like she can defend really well if she needs to, but at the same time, she's got pretty heavy shots and she's very good at the net. So it was more about, having this aggressive tennis, but not in this typical way, but in a way of putting together all those elements for them to be able to work at the same time. Because we know that the more tools the player has, the trickier it is to use them in the right moments, right? So
yes.
I think Marta was struggling for a little bit of time between being too aggressive in this typical female way and then too defensive, and she couldn't find this in between of where can I use the heavier forehand, when is the moment that I can actually take the ball to the net, when should I play with a bit more margin, and when I can step in a bit more, so it was a little bit of putting all of this together, and that really takes time, because the player needs to understand all of those pieces, how they fit, and then be able to execute this under pressure.
God, that's so true. I always think that players that have kind of the hands ability and a lot of shots from A to Z almost take till they're about late 20s to really find their form. But Marta's only, 23 years of age now, a career high ranking of world number 15. So is she somebody that takes information in quite quickly? How does she process what you tell her?
Very quickly, and she also learns very fast. So I feel like, we've been working together almost 3 years now. We've had three preps, really. So 3 big blocks of, being able to change something. And I feel like we've changed so many things and worked on so many things. We've touched on so many things technically, but she feels her body very well. So she feels the motion very quickly of what I want to pretty much give her and how I want her to play. So this is really a very easy thing, and I think all the great athletes, they really understand it super well.
I'm glad you mentioned great athletes, because that was another thing that Mike James and I discussed, how good of an athlete Marta is. He put her in the top 3 alongside Coco Gauff and Iga Swiatek in terms of just sheer athletic ability. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And what a bonus that is if you've got that, because it means you can then, if you're asked by a coach to do a certain thing, you can actually do it. Whereas some players are hampered, or they have to work extra hard off the court. I presume she is working really hard off the court, but if you just have that natural ability, that helps a lot. Did you have natural ability? Because you were a very good player.
I always like to say that I was a decent player, but yes, I was very athletic as well, and I was, I think I was, I mean, not I think, I'm sure that I was more on the defensive style. I wasn't able to be as aggressive, but my defense skills were great. I could run all day on the court and just bring the ball back, so that definitely helps. But Marta, yeah, I always tell her that, sometimes for me, working with her, it's just such a joy because there is like, my imagination is the limit of what she can, do on the court, what we can play with, how much, in what direction we can develop her. It really is like whatever you imagine is possible. And with some players that's not the case, because you have to take in to consideration those limits that they have, whether it's movement or whether it's some technical stuff that it's difficult to change. And with Marta, really, this is like you have a blank piece of paper and you can write anything you want on it.
Wow, that's some statement. And you mentioned the emotionalness of Marta. She is somebody who definitely wears her heart on her sleeve. And when I've commentated on her matches, I think that's the thing that really sticks out, particularly now that she's winning a lot of matches, is that she's able to play with freedom and fun, but also when things aren't going so well, she's able to sort of control that part of her brain, which I, as a player, and I didn't get to nearly her level, but I found that difficult. So I understand the emotional player. Were you like that? Were you calmer on court? And how have you worked with her to kind of get frustrated and then lose it and move on to the next point?
Well, when I was young, I was crazy emotional, I would say, on the court. And then over time, as I, grew older, it's naturally changes as well. So I understand this part. I really do. And yeah. I think that's what Marta at least told me what she liked the most at the very beginning when we were doing the trial. When she was getting emotional on the court, I wasn't telling her to calm down. I just, I just checked whether she's open enough to receive information. And if she was, I would just give her information of what I wanted to see on the court. And she told me back then that for her, it was such a new thing because all the coaches were telling her to calm down or stop crying or something like this, and I was like, okay, but did it ever work? And she was like, no. So I'm like, well, I know. So, so that's why I'm not telling you these things. Like, emotions are a natural part of our life. Some people are more emotional. Some people are less emotional. This is who you are. And, we have to find a way to make it work for you and make it, those emotions are very important. And I don't think they're negative. I think that it means that you care so much. So we have to find a way to make them serve you rather than, you being consumed by them. And this was really the goal all this time, and still is. I never see those things as a bad thing. I think she cares so much and she wants to win so much, and this is such help because of course you want to have a player that cares this much, that this is pretty much what she shows. And I think why she's able to control it more now, I think it's a combination of many things. I think it's a combination of her doing therapy, our work on the court, her simply growing up and being older. It's just all those puzzles coming together piece by piece. But again, it's work. It's not just me and her. It's many people that are involved in this process that that clearly works, because if she's winning and being a better player, then it works.
Are the people around her people that you've brought in, or are they people that she handpicks? So talking about the therapy side, do you bring in somebody to look at that you respect and know does a good job, or do you leave her to get on with that?
No, she's had a person she was working with already before she met me. So that was the case. Then when it comes to the fitness coach, I brought in the fitness coach, also a physio that we're traveling with sometimes. Then another physio was someone that Marta worked with before as well, and he's traveling with us sometimes too. So it's a combination.
Yeah, and staying healthy, of course, is absolutely paramount. And Mark Gellard sometimes co-hosts the podcast with me, and of course, as you know, he coaches fellow Pole Magda Linette, and he said actually sometimes when we brought the physio on, more physical problems arose because Magda was kind of looking, oh, this slightly hurts and that slightly hurts, whereas if they didn't bring a physio, she kind of forgot all about it and got on with it. I don't know if that's something that you can align with.
Wow, that's very interesting. No, and I'm happy that's not the case. Marta is definitely feeling better when we have a physio around.
And how much work goes on then with the physio off the court? So say now you're prepping for Roland Garros. At the time of recording, we're about, well, just less than a week now out of Roland Garros. How is she physically, having taken all the time off, but of course has had a lot of strain on her body, having won those 11 matches in a row?
Yeah, I mean, Rouen and Madrid were, they took a while. It was 3 weeks of a lot of tennis, but I think, pulling out of Rome was the right decision. She had a little bit of pain in her hip. We didn't want to push it, especially with French Open around the corner. So she took a couple of days off, did some recovery, some rehab, and we've been able to hit already for a couple of days before we came here. Her body is feeling good. As the drill is the same as always. We practice tennis, fitness, and then she has treatments, and pretty much like this every single day.
Do you try and have some good time off? And when you have the time off, do you try and kind of get her out of the hotel room and enjoying life and seeing things, or is it pretty much focused when you're on tour?
Well, a little bit, there are some days that are that end a little bit earlier, so you have some more time to go around and explore. Marta is a big foodie, so wherever we are, she's always researching the best restaurants around and wants us all to go and have, experiences together and try it. So tonight, actually, we're going to one of the restaurants that I think we booked already probably a month ago. So for sure.
What kind of food?
All different, honestly. She's a foodie, so she's gonna try everything, and then just make notes. I always love that we should start a TikTok that is just Marta trying food and us recording her reactions, because they're hilarious. Maybe one day we will we will start it, but yeah, she's super passionate about this. So a lot of restaurants, and to be honest, there's not that much time, and you really don't want to have this time, because if you don't have time, it means that the player's winning. If you have the time, it means probably that the tournament ended a bit early and you have some time before the next one. So I prefer to keep it this way.
You went straight from, it sounds like, the tour yourself, and then you went to Mouratoglou. How did you go to Mouratoglou? How did that come about? Did he directly come to you and ask you to coach there?
Yeah, so after I stopped working with Alize Cornet, Patrick asked me to come to the academy to spend some time with him. And, first I was a bit reluctant, because I wanted to take a little bit of time off from coaching. But later he told me that, it's not about coaching over there, but having a bit of a different role of a high-level director, it was really 50% tennis, 50% business, but it was mostly about scouting new players, young players, to come to the academy, and then building the teams around them. So finding coaches, but also coaching the coaches. And it's been an unbelievable journey over there. I feel like I learned more in 2 years there than I would have learned in 10 or even more years on the tour. And during the first year, I had the chance to work with Patrick pretty much every day. I spent almost every day with him, so I learned a great deal from him as well. And it was just, an unbelievable experience for my career, but also personally very fulfilling.
So if you were to give me 3 points from what you learned at the Mouratoglou Academy, what would the big ones be, would you say?
I don't know if I can put them into, bullet points, but one thing that I learned a lot was, on the technical side. I feel like on the technical side, before I came to the academy, I wasn't that great. And being able to spend time with different coaches, but also different players of different ages, girls and boys, and also with Patrick, and seeing his point of view of, how he sees technical changes and how he goes about them, gave me a tremendous amount of confidence in that department, really. One thing that I'll always remember, and I take with me, on days that are maybe a little bit tougher, is the passion that Patrick has for this sport and for the job that he does. It's unbelievable. Some days that I think that I'm tired or I cannot anymore, I just think of him and how packed his days were and how many things he was doing, but he always approached them with the same enthusiasm and like the same passion. So this is really huge to remember. And I think the last thing I would say is I for sure understood the importance of a team much more, because when I was working with Petra and Alize, it was me and maybe one more person, in the team. So it was really very small teams, and it works different when you are alone with a player or when there is just an extra person, even not full time, but here and there next to you. And at the academy, first of all, I was working in a bigger team of coaches, of people that were around me, but also a lot of players, and we wanted to give those players the best possible development that they could have. So for that you need more people. One tennis coach is not going to be enough if you're thinking of a player that's, let's say, 12 or 13 years old, and for their development to become one of the best players in the world. So just by being immersed in this environment, I understood how important it is to have those pieces together, and how actually tricky it is to put them all together. That I think is the one of the most difficult things. But I think I learned a lot about just human relations there as well.
Yeah, that's incredible learning experience, absolutely. And it does take a village, doesn't it? You see at the very top of the games, the teams are getting bigger and bigger, particularly on the men's side. But now I think on the women's side, if you look at Sabalenka's team, it's just growing in size. The player boxes are getting bigger. But then you've also got the difficulty, haven't you, if you disagree, because a lot of players now are bringing in, say, two coaches, because one coach doesn't want to do 30, 40 weeks a year. And then you get the difficulty, do we agree? Are we kind of undermining each other? So for you as the head coach of Marta, it's about, I imagine, getting the chemistry of the team right and everyone kind of working in the same direction.
Yeah, 100%. And sometimes you're going to have a great team of 3 people, and then you bring in the 4th person, and it's not necessarily that the chemistry is different or it's worse, but the atmosphere changes, and sometimes the player also feels like there are so many people in the team, it's more difficult to manage all that together. So really every single person, with every next person, like the dynamic within the team changes. So it's very important to pay attention to it and how it evolves, because it can be great, but it can also be not so great. And then it's very important to pick up on it very quickly and make changes accordingly, whatever that is. It doesn't necessarily mean you need to kick someone out entirely, but maybe share the weeks, or make only 3 people come at the time, or 2 people but not more. And there are many solutions, but very important to pay attention to it.
I do some coaching still alongside my commentary duties, and I find it amazing as a tennis coach when I'm on court how much of a therapist I am. And sometimes I'm coaching older people, and they really kind of use you a little bit like a hairdresser. They're telling you all their secrets, and of course you're not going to pass it along, and you're there just to listen. Are you good at that? Have you worked on that part of your coaching side as well?
I think I'm good at that. Yeah, naturally. I don't think there is any real reason other than the fact that I'm just a really curious person, like curious in the sense that I'm very interested in self-development, and I always was. So because of that, I love to figure out what makes people tick, and how I can help in all of that. So yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And just looking at the 3 main women you've worked with, I mean, so different. I know Elise Cornet a little bit. I don't know Petra Martic at all, and Marta I've met on a few occasions, but just thinking about their game styles, their personalities on court, everything about them seems like you've got 3 completely different individuals. How did you work alongside each of those particularly well?
Yeah, so I remember, with Petra, when we finished working together and I started with Alize, my only experience, was what Petra liked. And I just naturally started doing the same things with Alize. And I think it was first or second practice that I realized that the way she likes to practice is completely different. And I was like, wow, that's going to be something new for me. But I loved it because, that meant that I had to really just switch everything 180 and find a new way and learn basically her way of how she wants to do things and what's going to work for her, and not what works for me, because this is what I know. So I'm very happy that I had these 2 experiences that were completely opposite. And then also very happy that before I started working with Marta, I was at Muratoglu, because like I said, this experience was so enriching, like on so many different levels, that I feel like when I started working with Marta, I was a much more complete coach than I was just after I finished with Alize. And that allowed me to make some changes that maybe before I wouldn't dare to, because I just wouldn't be as confident in them. And now, I was able to see the the path and the vision a little bit broader than I think I would be able to do before.
Yeah, what a great answer, and it's so refreshing having another female. I've been desperately trying to find females for the podcast. We have had Biljana Veselinovic and Patricia Tarabini before you, but it's so few and far between. I think it's starting to improve, but I don't know how you feel, Sandra. I think more of the WTA players would actually benefit by having women alongside them, because I think we all kind of understand a little bit more the psychology of fellow women and what we're all going through. I know, speaking to a lot of male coaches, why is she, going up and down, and why is she going here? And they don't quite understand it. And so I think more WTA players, in my personal opinion, should be hiring more women. I'd love to know what you think about that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely easier to relate. There's no
Yes.
doubt about that. But that's one part of the equation, right? There are many different parts that need to come together, and I think I agree with you. I think that more players would benefit from having more female coaches. But the question is, why those coaches aren't there? Like, we have this WTA initiative of the WTA coaches mentoring for female coaches, and I think that's great, because that gives access to female coaches to enter the tour, to be recognized a little bit maybe by the players and get hired eventually, which is great. Would be amazing if we had more initiatives like this, but at the same time I feel like we will always have less female coaches on the tour, and the reason is simple. It's much easier for a man to leave his family to go travel for 40 weeks than it is for women that has kids or gets pregnant and has one kid, then maybe another, right? So I feel like there will always be less female coaches. Can there be more? Definitely. We can still make that ratio a little bit better, but I'm pretty sure that it's never going to be 50-50.
No,
Although,
I totally
hope
agree.
so, but I think that we're not going to see those days, and it's not necessarily wrong. I think this is just the way life is. And this job requires so much travel that, you need to sacrifice a lot. But I think we could squeeze in quite a few more there.
And we know the money situation. If you're outside the top 50, it's a very expensive tour, and you're kind of looking at the pennies and the cents to see if you can get through it and pay somebody. And I know a lot of the women hire a male coach who is also a hitter, because that saves them. Do you still hit on court? Are you still playing? Because obviously you were very good.
Well, I can hit if I need to, but to be honest, in the past couple of months, Marta is hitting so fast I really cannot control the ball. And I mean, I'm happy, right? This was always the goal. Maybe I need to get fitter. That can also be true, to be able to handle that pace. But right now, I will hit if I need to, warm her up if we don't have a hitting partner or something like this. But I will not be a great hitter during 2-hour practice for sure.
So getting practice partners, do you generally use the practice partners that are given by the tournament, or are you using other WTA Tour players?
We like to hit with other players mostly. When it comes to warm-ups and stuff, it's just easier to have a hitting partner, so we use the ones that are at the tournaments.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. And I'd love to go finally back into your history. Why did you start playing tennis, and what were your dreams as a young girl?
Well, I stopped playing tennis mostly because of my body. I was injured on and off so much that I just didn't believe anymore that I can make it. And I felt like, okay, if I cannot make it, what is the point, really? And I think I prolonged it for a really long time, as long as I could, because it was very difficult for me to take that decision to quit. And my dreams were, those same dreams as everyone else's when they pick up a tennis racket, win all the slams and be number one in the world. And my dream, or the condition of this dream, was also that I should be able to be number one in the world by the time I'm 18 years old. So it was very ambitious, but as a 10 or 11-year-old, what do you know?
Did you have family that was supportive of that? Did you have family members that were athletes?
No, my parents would have nothing to do with sport at all, but I was always very athletic and I loved all sports. So tennis was just one of them, but I played anything that I could get my hands on. And my parents, they were super supportive from the beginning, in a sense that they were always telling me that if there comes a day that I don't enjoy tennis anymore, I can stop it any second and I can go and do whatever I want. They just want me to be happy and, go for my dreams, whatever they are.
I think that's so important, isn't it? I travel more with the ATP tour side of things. I'm always asking the top guys, the likes of Yannick Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz and Novak Djokovic, why they think they are so good and how they've had this extraordinary career, particularly in Novak's case. And I think it all comes down to their absolute love of the game and their inability to put the racket down and give up. You know, they just want to compete so much. Do you think that's something that's just innate? Is that in somebody, or is that built up over time after you have success?
I think most of it is innate. It's something that you have because, you know, even watching Yannick win Rome now, like I was watching this match with Marta and her husband, and I said at one point, like, you know, how does he keep on going this way, that he wants to compete again and again and again, you know, because you don't feel like he's someone that is like, okay, I want to break all the records and be the greatest of all time. It doesn't seem like, you know, the primary motivation at all. And Marta said, you know, I think he just loves this sport so much that he just wants to be on the court. And I was like, I mean, this is really the only explanation, you know, because otherwise it's like, how do you explain this? You have a guy that comes out and just wins everything as it goes, you know, and just keeps going. And he could easily pull out of one tournament or two, and, you know, nobody would blame him if he wanted to rest. But for him, it's just like, no, I just keep going. But then again, the motivation is not to be the greatest of all time. I think if that happens, it's going to be, you know, I think if it happens, he's not even going to know. He will be like, oh, really? That happened? Like, okay, cool. But it's not going to be that important for him. You know, I think this is the part where he just goes out every day because he loves it, and he really wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with you. Would you say it's the same about Marta, that she just absolutely loves stepping out on court and competing?
Yeah, she loves competition in everything, you know, but tennis is something that she does so well, and she really likes to play. When she doesn't play, honestly, she watches tennis all day. There are times when we are at the tournament, and for example, she plays a late night match, and I have to tell her during the day, like, okay, I know you're probably watching tennis, so stop, because I need you to, like, you know, switch off a little bit and not be all the time and there is a match happening and I'm playing it or at least I'm watching it, right? So yeah, she honestly loves watching tennis, and she can watch a 125K or a 1000 tournament. It doesn't matter. If there is a tournament happening that week, you can be sure that Marta is watching.
That's very insightful. And how do you do with all the nerves and pressure watching her when she's playing a match? Are you kind of living every point inside you and you've got a good poker face?
Well, it's a funny thing because I always say that I'm not very nervous on matches, mostly. Of course, there are times where I get nervous, and I mean, you know, I'm just a human, so it would be weird for me not to get nervous. But most of the time, I really think that I'm pretty chilled. And then we were rewatching Marta's championship point from Madrid, and my face there is really so stressed and shocked during that point. You know, I'm like this all the time, and I took a screenshot of it and I sent it on our group, and I said, Sandra saying she's not nervous on Marta's matches, also Sandra on championship point, right? So I don't know, I mean, I can think one thing about myself, but I think it will be easier for people to tell when they, you know, when they watch me, whether I have a good poker face or not.
I'll be looking at you closely. I'm just looking at the results again from Rouen and Madrid. So in Rouen, she beat Parry, McNally, Lee, Maria, and then Podres in the final. And then in Madrid, Pudenseva, Pegula, McNally, again, Noskova, Potapova, and Mira Andreeva. It's an extraordinary run. She's lost 3 sets in that. Were there any matches in there that you thought she's not going to win this one? She can't possibly.
No, I never think that, honestly. Whether it's Madrid and Rouen or any other tournament, you know, I think she's got. If you look at her, she has it all, right? Tennis-wise, she's brilliant. Movement-wise, she's brilliant. She loves to play, so that's also brilliant. Like, you know, I really think that the sky is the limit for Marta, and into every match I go with the belief that she can win.
Incredible. And she is winning 11 matches in a row. She's almost one of the ones now to beat. Does that put a different pressure on your and her backs, or will she just handle it the same as she's always done?
I think it's difficult to say how she's going to feel on a match day, because
Yeah.
obviously this is the first time in her career that she has won this many matches in a row, and she just in a way needs to keep going, just. But so far it's the same, nothing has changed. We are very happy with what happened in Rouen and Madrid, and obviously we'll live those emotions when they come up, but we are also focused on the next thing, but also just the same thing, which is showing up every day and doing the same thing on the practice court every day.
Brilliant. And final question, did you manage to celebrate those 2 titles? Have you actually gone out and enjoyed it?
Yeah, we went out already the night in Madrid when she won. I mean, we went for dinner with the whole team, and then, we were flying to Rome the next day in the morning, so didn't have that much time. But that was it. It was a dinner. It wasn't anything huge. It was good enough for us.
Good enough. And perhaps you'll celebrate a little bit bigger at the end of 2026, which has already been incredibly successful. Sandra, thank you so much for your time. You're so nice in scheduling this. I know how busy you are. And I'm sure everybody wants to talk to you, given all your success. And a very good luck for the future. I do hope that perhaps we'll meet face to face at Roland Garros.
Thank you, Candy.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.